G'day folks, welcome to another episode of Learn to Paint TV. Rod Moore from Moore Art School with you again, and we've got an exciting episode this week. Now, one of my favourite artists is Monet, and if you saw our episode a few weeks ago, where we did a little cottage just outside of Givety. So I had the opportunity to go to Monet's home in 2012 and walk through his beautiful gardens, take lots of photos around the area, and it's been an inspiration for me for my painting since then. And one of the things that really struck me was the way he had engineered the landscaping and the water lakes and ponds so that he could capture those water lilies. So what we're going to do in today's painting is almost an abstract, if you like, version of his water lily paintings. We're going to do our own design of it. I'm going to start off with my 1-inch bristle brush here. I've got ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, alizarin crimson, and titanium white. And I'll start off and as I said, this is going to be a little bit abstract, but I'll explain what we're going to do as we go. I'll get a little bit of blue and white there. And what Monet would often paint in those water lily paintings was the reflections. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll paint in the reflection of the sky. So if you imagine we're looking down on the water surface here. And I've just got a fair bit of water in that brush, probably a little bit too much, but that's okay. We'll just block in something that you can see the water dripping off there. So probably got a bit enthusiastic there with the water, but not to worry, it'll dry off. So I'll just block in some of this blue here. And as I said, we're going to do this slightly differently, a little bit more abstract. And as you notice, I'm not going to use a direct drawing for this one. Not at this stage anyway. So what I'm really doing here is just painting in the background, the backdrop to the water lilies. A little bit more white in there. And let's get some yellow ochre into there now, a little pinhead of the red. Okay. Let's just test that. So this is, imagine the willow tree hanging down. And go for quite random sort of edges here. Don't have neat edges. See how because a lot of this will cover up anyway. We're going to have the water lilies over the top of all of this. And get some variety of colour and don't be boring with your tones. Notice I'm mostly painting this up and down, even though I'm doing the brush strokes quite random. Except for at the top, I'll just roll those over the edge like so. Get a little bit bluer down towards the base in here. And by just being a little bit random like that, it'll just create some interesting textures and shapes and things. Quite a bit bluer down the back here. And I'll just rough out some of those edges a little bit. Now, with that basic block in done, I've just blocked in the reflection of the sky and this very basic shape for the willow tree. Just put a few little details in there, a few shifts in tone and colour, a little bit of highlight, a little bit of shadow, but not really trying to paint a willow tree as such. It's really just a backdrop. That's the reflection of a tree on the riverbank, right? So if you imagine that, if you've ever wondered about what Monet was actually trying to paint, it's because everything was upside down, right? So he was standing on one side of the embankment, looking across to the other side of the river embankment where the tree would be standing up, and then it would be reflecting into the water. So everything was upside down in the reflections. So we're going to create a whole series of water lily pads. Some of them here. So if I'm standing here on the embankment looking down into the water, the water lilies that are going to be down here closer to me, they're going to be larger, and I'll be able to see more of the face of them. As they get further away, they'll flatten out, okay, and they'll become a bit smaller. So the ones up the back here, they're going to be a little bit flatter. So imagine if you're standing looking directly down at the water lily face of the water lily, and then as we get further and further away, the aperture closes, okay, and they get smaller. Really important for this part. And the other important thing is we want the eye to be able to just work its way through the painting. So if I just did a great big row of water lilies right there with no where for the eye to wander through, then the painting won't be that easy for people to look at. So we want to make sure that we make this, easy on the eye. So there's a couple little things there we have to keep in mind. So we'll just take some blue, and we'll take some red, we'll mix those together, make up a nice purple. I add a little touch of white in there. We don't want it to be too solid of a color, but just a little bit of a purple like that. So I think if we start over here and we just start to just draw in our water lilies here, okay, and on the bottom here they're going to have more of a shadow, so you can make your line a little bit wider there and join a few of them up. Okay, so we're going to join up some of these here and have a couple that run out of the painting as well. Okay, so we've got a nice little cluster of water lilies starting to develop there. So let's try placing one here. Okay, and this is why we've got to now ignore the underpainting. Maybe that one overlaps. Because if I've done a really nice part there in my willow tree and I'm now about to cover it with the water lily, that's going to not feel comfortable for some people. So that's why you're just going to completely put the underpainting out of your mind. We'll come back and we'll adjust parts of it as we go. So there's a nice dark shadow in there. And I think that's probably all we need in that section, because now our eye can wander in through here and then up into the painting, and we're going to let the painting breathe a little. So then what I like to do is think about it being in 3 different layers. So we'll do another layer through here, and then we'll do a layer at the back here. We'll just go a touch bluer. Okay, and so we want this eye to maybe wander through here and around there maybe. So what that means is we're going to have one here to push the eye that way. Okay, so this is a really good painting to learn about managing how the viewer sees through the painting. So we'll pop one there. Notice a little bit smaller, and the aperture is closing off a little bit. Put that one there. So our next step is going to be just to block in these water lilies, just with a base coat. And for that, I'm just going to step down to a larger flat brush. Don't go too small a brush if you're working on this size canvas. But we need a green that's going to be stronger in, more punch than the reflection behind it. But this is not going to be our highlight green just yet. So, okay. It's a little bit on the yellowy side. I add a little bit more blue to that. It's a nice sort of green there. Let me just test that in the middle here. Now that could work. When we get some highlights on that and I strengthen the shadow underneath it, that as a tone could work. But we just want to vary it up slightly. Don't make them all exactly the same. Right? We just shift the color here and there. That's a bit too bright there, that one. Not to worry. Just take your time. Go for a bit of variety in the different greens that we produce. Notice the shape, the way I'm using the brush, I'm kind of rocking it back and forward. Okay. Just touch a little that bit cadmium yellow in there just to lighten up. I wouldn't use that lighter color on the edge, but I'll use it there. Okay. You can see how the blue now sort of sits down behind the water lilies, so it makes it look like the water lilies are sitting on something, which they are. They're sitting on the water, of course. So let's take your time and just block these in. And we just need to go a little bit lighter as we get up to the back here now, but I don't want to put too much white in there. Like I'm talking about a pinhead there of it. Just to start getting a little bit lighter in value, which will of course create a sense of depth in what we're doing. And a little touch of the red in there, again, like literally just a pinhead. I hope you can see that on there. Mix that in, that'll just grey it back a little bit more white. And it's quite close in tone now to the backdrop. And that's okay because we're just blocking in here. We'll boost this colour up a little bit with some highlights. Good, good. Now I think we need to just brighten up with some brighter highlights now. So now we're going to take a big chunk of that green, that yellow, and mix up a much brighter green. Okay, I don't want it to be that yellow, so I'm just going to pick up whatever is underneath there. But you can see that that is quite a bit brighter there than what's already on there, yeah? That one's a bit too bright. Just little marks out the back here. And that's just the part that's sort of sticking up and grabbing a little bit more of the sunlight. And as we do these little steps, you can see that it's pushing the reflection of the sky and the willow tree, starting to push that all back into the distance, which is good. So at this point I'm going to switch to a little palette knife, and I'm going to take a big chunk of this white, and I'm just going to take a little pinch of that green, a little pinch of that grey green, mix that around. I just don't want that to be a pure white. Okay, so it's got a little bit of tone in there. And so if you do use a palette knife, then it's important that you manage how much paint you've got on there at any one time. So I just pull the paint off with paper towel. Now I'm going to use that edge there to flick up some flowers and things. So if I'm going to use that edge, then I've got to push that edge into the paint. See that there? Okay, that's probably a little bit too much, but let's just give it a try here. So I'm just going to use it just to sort of flick up some different tones. If it gets a bit too clumpy, just come back, wipe your brush, just come back and just pull a little bit of the paint out. Okay, that one's a bit dramatic, but don't make them all the same strength. See how that one's just a little bit more muted? That's important. So I've got those sort of focal ones here, which I've made them a bit stronger in strength there, but I don't want them all to be like that. And make them a little bit random as well. Okay, now, if you don't want to use the palette knife, then just use the brush as well. Come back to my little flat brush here. Let's just load just the tip of the brush. Not too much paint, just the tip, like so. And then I can come up to here and just, oh, that one's a little bit tall, just flick a few in with the brush as well. Okay, so just looking at it overall, I feel like the lily pads are a little bit too grey, a little bit too dull. So I want to punch them up a bit. Not everywhere, you know, again, like we'll just do little patches here and there. I'm going to just use a touch of this phthalo green here and there, not everywhere, right? And I think by using that in the lily pads themselves, it'll separate it from the reflection of the backdrop. Let's get some more cadmium yellow in there as well. So take a little bit, this is a really strong colour, the phthalo green. More of that cadmium, there we go, it's sort of more of a turquoisey green there now. Tone it back a little bit with the ultramarine blue. Let's just test where can we use that to greatest effect. I don't want to eliminate what we've already done, and this would have been a good idea to do perhaps a bit earlier. But you know, you've got to reassess and reevaluate these things as you go. It's certainly brightening them all up, which is what I kind of had hoped for. Might just run a couple of lighter blue ripples around through here. Just up to the sort of edges of some of these water lilies. They will dry because the white tends to dry off and lighten quite a bit and fade. So I think these will sit back nicely into the painting once it all dries off. Well, there you go, folks. Simple little rendition of Monet's Waterlillies, something that anybody can have a go at. We just started out building it up in layers, so we flipped it over. We worked on the sky and the willow tree, getting that in as a basic sort of blocking, I guess. And then, you know, remember the rules of drawing the aperture and the size and so on of the Waterlily pads. A few different variations of green. I started out with a darker, sort of more grayed off green. And then we got brighter and brighter, and we eventually used a little touch of the phthalo blue, which punched it right up, and the cadmium yellow medium. And then I added in just some bluey white little ripples of water. They will settle back in once this is completely dried, I have no doubt. And those little pink and white flowers, I think, add a nice touch. That little touch of pink just brightens it up again. And a few little reeds, hints and indications of reeds. Don't try and, you know, paint in a big clump of them. I think that would be overdoing it. And overall, you know, I think it turns out to be quite a nice little painting. So have a go at this one. I think you'll find it a bit of fun, and there's 100 different variations of this that you could do. So play around with the different variations, enjoy it, that's the most important thing. And thanks for watching Learn to Paint TV. Make sure you drop by our website at www.learntopaint.tv and check out all the episodes there and all the other information we've got for you. And until next time, happy painting.